Podcasting since 2005. This is the King of Podcasts radio network. KingofPodcasts.com.
We're going to change it up today. What is it that makes a really great podcast guest? Thank you for joining me for Podcasters Row. King of Podcasts here with you. Appreciate all of you joining me on the program and joining me here through the courtesy of website KingofPodcasts.com. Apologies for a little bit of a delay that we haven't had any new episodes in the last month or so because took a little bit of time away. We're going to go back into more episodes very soon. And one of the areas I wanted to talk about on this particular program today, and I thought would be a good switch around. I hadn't thought about doing this yet, but it's great to get and listen to other fellow podcasters out there. But it's also a thing where when you want to go ahead and know what to do, I mean, we've done my Podcasting 101 series where I have given a lot of tips and tricks on what to do to be a proper podcast host. But it's also going to be said where you find somebody that is a guest and they've been very familiar with being on a plethora of podcasts and they might have their way of how they might manage doing a show. And you got to ask yourself, when you have somebody that you have that might have been featured on various podcasts, various different, platforms, how do you make an episode stand out for yourself? So with me today, I think is somebody that's going to help me get us into that right area. Also, a marketing whiz himself. So he is an Australian marketing consultant, founder of the Institute.The, a firm that creates sales-stimulating ideas for businesses of all sizes. He's known for his wow factor marketing philosophy, which focuses on developing refreshingly unconventional and creative campaigns that generate measurable results. We take our microphones to Brisbane, Australia, and John Dwyer. John, thanks for being on.
Thank you, George, for having me. And I believe that I got invited because the three other guests that you had lined up couldn't make it, so therefore I was number 4. Is that right?
Well, I mean, they can't make it 11 o'clock time in the East Coast for us at night. This is actually, what's funny is this is actually normally the time I record any of my other episodes of my other programming because at this time I have nobody else to worry about. I'm completely not distracted. It's like, okay, unencumbered. It's wonderful. So
good point.
That's the part I enjoy about this. So I guess like I'm in my prime right here. Normally it's not, this will be one of the nights I don't do a show, but like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights, I'm doing shows. We're doing this on a Monday night, by the way.
Wow.
All right. So we shouldn't do anything more about the process of being a podcast guest. You would be normally coming on any podcast to talk about what you do yourself with the Institute.The. Now, first of all, there's some background for yourself. You've worked with some of the biggest names in the business, from McDonald's to KFC, and you have these foundational marketing principles that you apply to a global giant with a multi-million-dollar budget translating to local small businesses with a shoestring budget. And you work with some great names out there and not just great brands. So take me into what is that makes the Institute wow and how you're able to go ahead and translate an idea that could be for a big or smaller outfit.
Good, George. We are, I guess, specialists at what you would call direct response marketing. Mm-hmm. And as that phrase infers, it's all about getting a direct response from your Facebook ads or your, LinkedIn ads or your Instagram ads or whatever it might be. So we're not the typical ad agency that tells you that they're going to help you get people to fall in love with your brand so that they'll taste your product. We actually flip that. We show you how to get people to taste your product so that they'll fall in love with your brand. Mm-hmm. And unless you're Nike or Kellogg's or Coca-Cola, then you probably can't afford to put your face on the side of a bus or sponsor the Olympics or the basketball teams. And we tend to attract the clients who might be more small to medium-sized businesses that want to advertise today and, put food on the table tomorrow. So it's all about direct response tactics.
Now, one of the areas I want to ask into the podcast guesting angle that I'm talking about here. So that question I asked you there, compared to having the typical tell us about yourself and leaving it open for yourself to go and talk about, or basically leaving it alone for people to have your own elevator pitch. When you've had people come on, are you more accustomed to having that kind of just to open up and tell us about yourself? And is that something that you feel like, do you feel like people might get, does it concern you because it might become something where you might draw along for a couple of minutes and you want to make sure people are going to stay engaged into what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, dead right. Look, people say to me all the time, how long should our Facebook video ad be? And I said, look, if you're Robin Williams or Jim Carrey, it can be an hour. But if you are boring, then, try and stick to the 60 seconds or 2 minutes because you will bore people shitless otherwise. And look, in terms of, tactics, I'll give you one or two. We have a formula at the moment which we call the Facebook contest formula. I come from a background of doing pretty much all of Rupert Murdoch's newspaper scratch bingos and the Monopoly-style promotions for McDonald's and KFC. So all that sort of stuff. So I come from a contest background. We do $1 million prizes quite often because we get them from Lloyd's of London for $25,000. They'll give us $1 million, and then $1 million prize, I should say. And, we help hotels fill rooms by telling people, if they stay at my hotel, then you have the chance to win $1 million and all sorts of things. But one that is like staggering, and we only sort of just developed in the last 6 months, and we call it the Facebook contest blueprint. And it's so simple. It's just ridiculously simple. And it's getting people 1,000 leads a week or up to 1,000 leads a week for $20 or $30 a day spend, which is pretty stupid. And all it is that we encourage businesses to give away their product or service as the prize on Facebook. So they run a contest on Facebook, and it can be any other platform, but let's just say Facebook. And what happens is that they simply let's just say, for example, a dentist. We had a dentist recently, and they came on board and they said, we want more rich parents with children with crooked teeth. I said, fine. So we geodemographically targeted the Facebook ads to the rich suburbs. And we said, how would you like to win Invisalign braces, which is the invisible braces for your child's teeth? Now, the only rich parents who are going to enter that contest are parents with children with crooked teeth. Mm-hmm. He spent $30 a day and got 991 leads in the first week. So he gives away one prize, but then he's got 990 people who have glowed in the dark, put their hand in the air and said, my kid's got crooked teeth. That's not a list. That's not a database. That's a red hot leads.
Now, John, I won't say, in terms of maybe how many years you've already been doing this kind of marketing, but I'm old enough to know, getting near 50 years old, to remember how people would market and promote, just like you said right now with the Facebook contest form, where you give away a product to get more people to go ahead and engage with the product. There's not a lot of that going on. In America itself, I don't see a lot of that going on where people are willing to go ahead and put their money where their mouth is and put a promotion out there. At the same time, I also think about when you have, ads for like McDonald's or KFC, large, familiar fast food brands, you got to do something where I feel like the marketing here has to be too cool for school, if that makes sense. Because we can't be campy, we can't be goofy, we can't be over the top. No jingles, no singing, nothing like that. It's very, very bland and very, very dry here now, more than ever. And then if they're going to do anything that's kind of out there, it's like, let's make it like a TikTok video. So when you look at that, it looks like you kind of give the best of both worlds. You are playing up to what traditional advertising is able to do, because in the markets you work at, especially in Australia, I can imagine, or in the UK or wherever else, maybe English speaking, they can have a little more fun with each other.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm a baby boomer, so, I grew up with Little House on the Prairie. I actually lived with Little House on the Prairie. Michael Landon, yeah. So look, I've been around the block a few times, and I've got 6 millennial children, and whenever they see my advertising, they go, oh, Dad, seriously, you shouldn't use so many words. And because, that age group that are coming through are all about minimalistic. And the thing is that I keep on saying to people, and I know it serves my purpose because I'm a baby boomer, but I say, look, if you had to have a heart transplant, would you pick the kid that just came out of medical school and he's 24 years of age and says, I've never done this before, but I'll give it a hell of a shot? Or would you pick the doctor that's been doing it for 4 decades? And I think you'd pick that. And I said, in your instance with your business, if you need a heart transplant for your business, you're going to pick the bearded hipster who's 23 and, has not done too much of this, or you're going to pick the guy that's done 4 million of these. It doesn't matter about the platform. The platform might be Facebook or it might be X, it might be Instagram. It doesn't matter what it is. The concept itself is what works. And the stuff that I was doing for fast food chains many thousands of years ago still works today. It's just a different communication platform. That's all.
Now, when it comes to how you can target those ads based on the demographic they might be looking for, and knowing who's going to be engaging on those platforms. So if it's Facebook, you would think an older demographic. X, you might think a different demographic as well. If it's Instagram, maybe more of a female demographic. And the way you do that, I mean, you can do a lot with editing now and make a very flashy video. But also it's a matter of what you do in the content itself to draw the attention, because anybody could just see something flashy and just skip through it. What do you do to catch that attention span?
Well, I'll give you an example, because you guys are pretty close to the radio industry, and I've worked for a couple of as a consultant for a couple of radio stations in Sydney, Australia, in particular, but I've done it for American radio stations as well. And only yesterday I posted a sarcastic piece on my Facebook page, which got a little bit of interest, and that was, I was in the car and in front of me was a taxi, and that taxi had a cab advertisement on the back of it promoting the radio station. And it had a picture of the, breakfast team, which is normally a lady and a man these days. And it said, listen to 102.9 from 6 a.m. That was it. Yep. And they thought that they're on drugs. Do they really think that somebody's going to go, oh, my God, 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, I'm going to listen to those? And I said, if they actually said, listen at 6:15, 7:15 and 8:15 tomorrow, because at each one of those time slots, we're going to give you 5 birthday dates, 5 dates. If your birthday appears on any one of those dates, you win X $1,000. And, they don't do it. But we took a Sydney radio station from a ratings number of 10 up to 19 within 3 weeks by simply letterbox brochuring. And back in the day, you'd do it digitally now, but back in the day, we letterbox dropped all of Sydney. We gave them a scratch bingo card, and you had to listen to this particular radio station, which is called, 2UW, and you had to listen at 6:15, 7:15 and 8:15 because there would be a bingo call routine. And when you did that bingo call routine, they scratched out the numbers, and they found that they had 3 of the 4 Beatles symbols that they had to get for $50,000 within the 2 days. Guess what the ratings were on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, when you've got 3 of the Beatles symbols that are going to bring you 50. So the thing is that a lot of the younger folk, and, my millennial children will hate me for saying this, but they're into the tagline, they're into the brand message, but what they're not taking advantage of is a lot of what they measure their advertising on, which is vanity metrics. If they go home that night and say to the kids, look, we got 200 likes today, the kids are probably going to say to them, Daddy, that's great, but there's no food on the table.
Right. Now, the other thing, too, is that if you get good advertising, every year I watch the Super Bowl and any other major sporting events, if I watch, it's going to be the insurance companies in America that are going to be the most entertaining commercials they are. They're funny, they're crafty, they're creative. They put some real thought into it. And you watch them over and over and over again because they're out there, and they just don't disappoint. Now, but the thing is, not everybody's going to be able to afford that ad agency. And not everyone's going to go ahead and say, the agencies are going to always try to push towards another agenda that's going to be some other kind of thing. Like right now, even with public relations, whether it's a PR agency that connected with me and you to get this interview together. Yep. And, it's like you have to work on also, if you have expectations as a client trying to reach someone like yourself, there is going to be that push and pull of the persuasion that you'll have saying, well, you should try to do something like this. And that might not, and even though there might be some expectations that client might have, everybody gets kind of pigeonholed in the same kind of thing because they're going to say, well, you can think of this idea, but it doesn't work. How often do you really plan to making something that's going to really feel you're taking that client's idea to mind, regardless of how far-fetched it is, and how much is it to make a client convinced they should actually call and follow with where you're going with a campaign for them?
Yeah, look, my job, if we want to continue putting food on the table, all of our 6 kids have left home now, and so it's just my wife and myself, so we don't have to put that much food on the table anymore. But my mantra being direct response is all about problem solution advertising. So it's the infomercial on TV where you see the lady might be overweight, and you say, look, your problem is that you're not feeling good about yourself and perhaps you're overweight. Do you know that summer's just around the corner? You can look like a supermodel in 4 weeks if you do this dietary program, whatever it may be. Right. So that's the problem solution formula. So all of this direct response stuff, whether it's a George Foreman barbecue or whether it's weight loss programs or whatever it is, it's all about providing that problem and then giving them a solution. There's nothing particularly new about that. I'm sure most of your listeners would know that. But you know where they fall down? Because normally it's problem, then it's aggravate problem, then it's provide the solution, and then number 4, it's normally proof, which is testimonials, and then number 5 is where most people fall down. It's a good CTA, call to action, and that's where they fall down. And so therefore they present the problem, they provide the solution, whether it's a headache tablet or whether it's a weight loss program or whatever it might be, but they get to the end and they sell on price. And what we try and teach them is don't sell on price, provide a Happy Meal toy, just like McDonald's, and make them get across the line quickly. You provide the Happy Meal toy with a date, deadline, and you say, look, if you get in by Friday, we'll give you a free vacation, or we will give you a free whatever. And that's where most people fall down. They let people sit on the fence forever instead of pushing them to make a decision by Friday and getting a Happy Meal toy.
Now, of course, you've been asked this question before about getting to work with the incomparable Jerry Seinfeld, the Greater Building Society campaign, and the fact that he's only done 3 campaigns working with anybody at all in his career. And yeah, it's just, he's not so much of the limelight part. It was always Larry David that was more of like into the Hollywood thing, and Jerry just got to be a part of it and really was just like, he wanted to go ahead and do the comedy they wanted to do. Left on his own terms, always does everything on his own terms. And for that's a very difficult client to work with, even though you might realize, well, no, he probably would be really easy to work with if you just kind of like follow along with what he wants. So trying to go ahead and play the right role when you have a client like that, tell me about what it was that you felt like where that wow factor pitch was going to work to get someone like him on board and the results you got for him.
Yeah, and George, as I mentioned to you before we pressed the record button, I've milked the daylights out of this for the last 10 years. 10 years. Yeah. And even my wife says, when are you going to let the Seinfeld thing go? I said, never. It's an attention-seeking device, And what it was is that I was a consultant to a bank down under called the Greater Building Society, same thing as a bank building society, and they were up against the Wells Fargo-style banks here in Australia. And I said to them, you people are on drugs. You're on TV and social media advertising home loans at whatever it was at the time, let's say, 5.8%. Do you realise that the Wells Fargo Bank or the Bank of America down under will beat you within 5 minutes? It'd be like a corner store taking on Costco on price. You're never going to win on price. And they said, okay, smart Alec, what do we do? And I said, look, I've been doing some infomercials on TV for a travel discount company. How about I introduce you? And instead of giving away the 1% honeymoon rate for home loans, which is what every bank in the world does for the first 12 months. They give you 1% rate. Why don't you give that to the travel company and they'll give you a $10,000 vacation for 5? And they said, okay, smart Alec, we'll give this a shot. We tested it for the first month where we came on TV and social and said, get a home loan from the Greater Building Society or swap from the big banks and we'll give you a free vacation. So it's cost neutral because all they did was transfer the 1% honeymoon rate across to the travel company. And in the first 2 years, they took an extra $15 billion worth of home loans, and this idiot who you're talking to charged a consultancy fee instead of a percentage, so I'm a moron. And it went nuts. It just absolutely went nuts. They had a call centre with 20 ladies. They had to triple that to 60 within the first week or two. We're talking about a Happy Meal toy on steroids. I mean, who doesn't want a free vacation?
If they got a Jet2 holiday, you might even get more response now these days.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, $500,000 loan would get them somewhere in Australia. $1 million loan would get them to Disneyland or Disney World, twice over. So it was a pretty sexy offer. And we would have customers come on TV and on social saying, we used to have our home loan with one of the big banks. They wouldn't mention their name, of course. We've swapped across to the Greater, and then all of a sudden, Heavenly Music, White Doves, and we've just gone to Disney World. So it was pretty easy stuff. And what happened is about 3 years into that, the general manager of the bank said to me, look, we've picked up all the low-lying fruit. What else you got? And I said, well, why don't we get a celebrity? And so they said yes. And we put out a research survey. I was hoping it would be an Australian, easy-to-get celebrity. And Robin Williams came first and Jerry Seinfeld came second and Jim Carrey came third. I thought I dug my hole. What did I do there? So as it turned out, I flew to New York and met with the Robin Williams manager, and we did the deal with Robin Williams. And then, unfortunately, no sooner had I arrived back in Australia.
Right.
No, this was well before his passing. But when I arrived back in Australia, he got a movie to do. This was about a dozen years.
Gotcha.
And then anyway, so we went to number 2, and that was Seinfeld. And as it turned out, it took me 6 months to get him across the line. But when Jerry, I asked him why did he do this, because we flew backwards and forwards for 3 years to New York to do all the ads. Yeah. And he said, well, 2 things. I like the Aussie sense of humour. You guys are pretty sarcastic like us, so therefore I enjoy that. But he said the other thing is I never thought you'd bloody go away unless I said yes. And I said persistence beats intelligence in my book.
No, but you know what? It's also a testament to Jerry Seinfeld for the fact that his star, even though that show ended in 1998, and the fact that, in syndication and now in streaming, it's relentless. I mean, you can't get away from that show. And it's also, part of the fact there's not that much new content out there that really just stands the test of time. There's not that many sitcoms that hold like that anymore, but that does. That's incredible. I just can't.
And you know what though? Can you imagine if it was already successful for the first 3 years without Seinfeld? Once we put Seinfeld on TV and social, saying basically, swap your home loan and get a free vacation, it just went absolutely nuts. And interestingly, though, George, as a result of that, just before COVID, just once you got Seinfeld doing your ads, and of course, as you said, it was the only third time he's done ads, and the other times were American Express and Microsoft, so they're a bit bigger than this little bank down under. Basically, I had a call from a company that said, look, we've got access to unsold hotel rooms around the world. And I said, yeah, come on. And they said, we are not marketers. We've just seen what you've done with the Seinfeld thing down under. Yeah. Do you want to join forces and provide this unbelievable Happy Meal toy to businesses? And so that's what we do these days. I know if you're listening to this, you won't see what I'm holding up. But now what we do is that we actually provide to businesses a vacation voucher that they get from us for $50. And they get 3 to 7 nights vacation in America and all around the world. Oh, yeah, it's a crazy. And you were talking about podcasters before, and because I know that most of your listeners will be podcasters. Can you imagine if they had a Happy Meal toy where they said, listen to my podcast and I will give you, the chance to win one of 50.
Grand prize.
Or 1 of 10 or whatever it might be. And we're talking Orlando, New York, we're talking Las Vegas, Grand Canyon, all the sexy places. So therefore, for the last 5 years, we had to sit on our hands for COVID, but for the last 5 years, we're actually now giving businesses the Happy Meal toy they don't even go looking for. They get $1,000 vacation for $50, and they give that to whoever buys their lawn mowing service or whoever buys their refrigerator.
It's one of those things where you're talking about greater building and the fact that it's initially ads for them were a different scale, but then the growth of the company for how it was just comes to another level. You see the change of the ads. I've seen a lot of companies that'll do that. That will go from regional to national, or they'll just be a national outfit, but really have something that's kind of quirky out there. The general insurance company I always think about where the general, you got the little jingle, and now he has Shaquille O'Neal is also doing commercials with them. They've already stepped up to celebrity status as well. And it's like, well, they sold insurance policies. Something worked. And it's a very heavy market. I don't know why that is so important in this area in America, but it totally is more than anything else. And there's, people are only going to be willing to go and advertise in sports or advertise for live events. But now, not much scripted programming. How are you going to get yourself through streaming or through other outlets? And, what you got to go ahead and promote and create for YouTube is going to be different than other things because of what people are watching, it's that attention and saying, okay, how are you going to make that person avoid that first 5 seconds of skipping an ad, which a lot of those kind of ads are going to come from. You got to give them that. So I imagine for like a greater building, if you're doing an ad right now, you put that Happy Meal toy right there at the very beginning. You want to learn how to win this? Stay tuned to learn more about this. But first, this. And then you get
it. You know what, George? It doesn't have to. The free vacation thing obviously is the best Happy Meal toy you can have because it appeals to both sexes and all ages. We had a turf farm a little while ago. So he sells grass. Okay, he's got miles and miles of turf, and he said to me, "Look, how does this work for me?" I said, "Well, who's your target audience?" And of course, it's landscapers because they will buy 5 or 10 homes worth of turf. Rather than mum and dad would buy front yards worth of grass, right? And so we just gave them an incentive that if you, for every 500 square metres of turf, we talk square metres in Australia rather than yards, so that's a front yard and a backyard, we'll give you a carton of prestigious beer. Now, these landscapers would normally drink any beer, but this was the prestigious beer that, they normally wouldn't buy themselves. Right. So it was a BMW of beers. And he had about just under 1.5 miles worth of turf. He had a lot of acreage. And we sent out the email and through mail because landscapers tend to be technophobes. And we said, look, for every home's worth of turf, then we'll give you basically a carton of beer. He rings me 6 days into it and said, we've got a problem. We've got no more turf. And I said, what? He said, we're sourcing turf from other turf farms to keep up with the demand for the beer. And he said, John, I'll tell you how stupid this is. He said, there's one guy who's the worst client in the world. He would always ring me up and say, how much per square metre? And I'd say, whatever it was, $6. He said, well, I can get it down the road for $5.50. So he had to drop his pants to $5.40, and he said it was a race to the bottom. That same guy who was always price conscious rang up and said, I want 18 homes worth of grass, but I don't care when I get that. I need 18 cartons of beer by Friday. I've got a party.
Wow, that's crazy. Now, I got to ask you about this. Now, let's go and transition to the fact that what you're doing for other clients, you're doing a great job of promoting for them. But it also has to go and turn it back around for yourself, because you have to also be your best promoter. So for yourself, when you're doing these podcasts, from small business, big marketing to the Practical Wealth Show, when it comes to telling your message and the stories that you tell to different audiences as hosts, so like you've already talked to us so far about, various campaigns you've done. Is there a consistent message across the platforms you already do that you used to always keep hampering on when you do an episode? Is there anything in particular, from your own branding that you have to go ahead and hit on every interview and find a way to put it in there?
Yeah, exactly. Normally what I do, and I think I showed it to you before we press the record button, but I give away the opt-in gift of all gifts, and it's a tabloid size book called The Wow Manifesto, which has 300 pages of direct response ideas in here, which would suit a podcaster as much as it would suit a butcher and a baker. And normally I just, give my email address, and if they want that, they get it for free. No questions asked. But do I get business from that? Normally, yeah. So therefore, if I give away 50 of these after a podcast, there's every chance in the world I'll get 4 or 5 people will ask me, look, how else can you help me? So it's the typical lead magnet that you'd be very familiar with. But what I did is...
that book's a little bit bigger than a coffee table, just so you know the size of it. So, yes.
It's the size of a tabloid newspaper. Look, the one that I am holding up is leather bound with gold tip edges, and my clients call me a wanker because of it, because it is a wanker book. But, it's $420 to print, would you believe? So I can't give the real copy away. Yeah, but I give the digital copy away, and I'll give my email address later. But, yeah, so the thing is that I thought to myself, look, if I set up my own podcast, because I'm heading up towards 120 years of age, it's going to take a while to build the audience. So why don't I just make myself, a guest of podcasts that get to business owners? And so, therefore, I've just got a girl in the Philippines that, essentially books me into these things and invites me, like she would have invited you, to simply go to, my name's John Dwyer, so it's jdpodcastguest.com. I hope you don't mind me saying that. But when people... Yeah, and when you went to jdpodcastguest.com, you'll see Seinfeld all over it. Of course, I'm showing off about him, but by the same token, it'll give you, George, and perhaps others some sort of degree of comfort that it's going to be an interesting interview. It's not going to be like watching paint dry. And, that has been marvellous, because she will, I think she gets, I forget what it was now, but it might be $80, I think it might be per, podcast. So it's pennies. And she will put me on between 3 and 6 podcasts a week. And every time I get on a podcast, I will get probably 3 to 6, leads from that podcast. And they're warm leads because they're already following you, George. So therefore they trust you, they trust your brand. They know you wouldn't have a complete moron on. And so therefore those leads are always warmer than if I did a webinar, for example.
It's interesting. So in my business, we were talking before we got on here about what I do in my full-time outfit, which I wish it paid more, but radio is a cruel mistress. We already know that. And if I could use the money, I almost feel like, putting out my PayPal and my Cash App right now, it's like so cash strapped. But that's another story. But the one thing is, I always have to go and work with people, coaching and consulting, to help them host their own podcast. Because one of the things in our persuasion here is, our sales team is trying to convince people, because it's a higher buy, to buy podcast time, to be in their own weekly podcast. And we're trying to convince them, hey, look, we're concierge. We're going to do it all for you. So don't worry about anything. All you got to do is just go and sit down, put a microphone in front of you. You want your guests provided for you. We'll find them. If it's your people, or if it's somebody that you want us to bring to you, happy to go and do that. But it's one of those things where nobody ever thinks about the fact that that's where these PR companies are now coming around, where they all do that kind of part where it's like, okay, they're going to paid earn media for themselves. They're going to make what they're going to make off of this, and they're going to find appearances. And, when you think about who it is that is booking these appearances, how much input are you giving to them? And, I mean, are there rarely any places where they try to send you an appearance and you say, no, that's not for my audience. That's not for me.
Not very often. I mean, look, it's all about message to market match. If I was going to buy a sports jacket at a menswear store and they gave me a free skateboard as the Happy Meal toy, then I'd say thank you, but you're an idiot. And so therefore, the message to market match. It's the best podcasts for me are going to be when people who are listeners own a business, because I don't do B2C. Mine is all B2B. Look, there's the odd one that, there was a one that I did about 1 month ago, and it was two ladies who in America, in Texas, were chiropractic the doctors. And I thought, oh, my goodness, what do I know about, chiropractors? But as it turned out, when I dived into my files, I have done about a dozen chiropractor services over the years. And I won't bore you with the details of them, but yes, I was a guest on that. Ended up being fantastic. But on the surface, for me to look at a doctor's sort of podcast, I know they're not doctors, but they want to be doctors. At first glance, I thought, oh, this is not for me. But there hasn't been too many I knock back because, look, at the end of the day, George, I mean, big deal. I give up 30 or 45 minutes. If there's the odd one that's a bummer, so be it.
Sure. Well, now, about those that you might get, are there certain things that you would like that podcasters would do more of? So, for instance, for me, I have my pet peeves because I'm always trying to think what the guests should have in mind. There's areas where if I'm going to ask questions, I don't want to throw softball questions. I know some people, they have a particular agenda they want to go and cover. So they want to make sure that, they're not going to get thrown with anything that's going to be out of left field, that's going to be uncomfortable or awkward. Now, there's that part. There could also be where the host might be taking too much time for themselves to kind of fill up their ego or to be too full of themselves. Are there certain things you notice? And we're not naming names. We're just saying in general, is that something you see in some of the experiences you've had where you've had some people that might have taken themselves a little bit too much into the format and they're not necessarily considering what your message is. They're more concerned about just the presentation and making themselves look good.
Spot on. George, you are spot on. And a lot of the podcasters I found think they're Conan O'Brien, so they can take up 70% of the podcast and the guest takes up 30%, but they ain't Conan O'Brien. So you're quite right. I mean, there was one even last week and it ran for about 40 minutes and I'm guessing he would have gone on for 30 minutes and I got 10. And it's not don't get me wrong, it's not a contest. It's just you think to yourself, my goodness, I wasn't able to contribute any real value because I only got 10 minutes out of 40. So it must be something you're very familiar with. You must see a lot of podcasters that decide that they're more important than the guest.
Oh, the ones I have to go and coach. And then I have to go and bring them back down to earth. And the other thing, too, I'll tell you like this, not for nothing. The other thing, too, is that I have these podcast hosts that are sponsoring to be on the network. And, it's a bit much, but it is something where it used to be much easier for some show hosts to stay on and be convinced, you know what, this is working for me. They don't want to give it 6 months to say, okay, hey, leads, we're going to still really get generated. We need to build an audience. We need to build things up, which is one of the reasons you said yourself why you don't host one yourself, because it is start something from scratch. When you have all your other platforms you worked on for all these years, it's much easier going the other route and being the guest. So, but the thing is, we don't try to go ahead and charge for guests. We try, but it's not something that people really want to do, no matter how much we give extra to them. Oh, we'll give you the video. We'll give you the transcript. We'll give you the ebook. We'll make it into an ebook. We'll do whatever you want with it. It's like, well, they're not willing to go spend the money on it. So, I mean, for that, what would be the modus operandi for a podcaster to be able to go and monetize someone for an appearance? And for yourself, you want the podcast appearance to benefit for you because you see more benefit from that as opposed to doing it on your own and trying to do the message on your own.
Really, really simple, George. If I'm flogging the vacation program, for example, we get access to unsold hotel rooms right around America and around the world. So the cost of goods is zero. Okay. So therefore, the hotel's giving up the rooms outside of school vacation periods because they make money on food and beverage. But we get the accommodation for free. And so therefore we got something that's called variable pricing. Not many people have variable pricing. They buy the TV from China for $200, bring it into America. They've got to sell it for $400. But if they don't sell it, they'll still spend $200. If I don't sell the vacation program, then it hasn't cost me anything. So therefore I get together with list owners, the Frank Kerns and Ryan Diases and Russell Brunsons of the world. And I do JV, joint ventures with them. So therefore they will have me as a webinar. We'll get on and tic-tac and do the whole story. I will sell the vacation program, and then I will share the revenue with them because I've just borrowed the equity of their database. And not one podcaster has ever asked me that. If a podcaster said to me, listen, you can, without being silly, you don't want to turn it into a webinar where it's a, death by PowerPoint. I'm not suggesting that for a moment.
Right.
But if you tease the audience with some really good stuff like this, or the $1 Million Draw, or gas discounts, and all these packages that we have because we're a direct response agency, and they buy through a particular affiliate link, can I have a percentage? I would say yes within a heartbeat. But not one has ever asked if they would like to joint venture with any of this stuff. And obviously the podcaster has to check it out to make sure that it's all above board. But yeah, that's a real opportunity I think a lot of podcasters are missing out on.
So now I want to go and get into talking about what you have right now in terms of all that you're working on. First of all, the incentive.The right off the bat. We just mentioned jdpodcastguest.com if you want to have JD here as a guest on your series. But I want to give you a couple minutes to go and talk about what you have all together because there's a lot of places. But incentive.The, the incentive.com is the main center, the main hub of everything that you're working on, correct?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So that's the name of the business, and obviously it's appropriately named because I believe that if you're going to advertise, then make sure it's got a wow factor, because if it doesn't, then why are you doing it? And my view is, George, that most business owners have come through university or college and they've become a doctor or dentist or butcher baker, so they're very good technicians, but not once throughout those 3 or 4 or 5 years at university were they ever taught how to get a customer. So, we have dentists and doctors ring us up who are, part of a medical practice, and they say, listen, can you teach us how to get customers? Because we learned how to be a good dentist, or we learned how to be a good chiropractor, but no one ever taught us how to get customers. The sort of stuff that we do, we have a consultancy side of our business whereby I become, their quasi-marketing manager, and they pay a few dollars each month for me to put everything together for them, and that's nice. It's harder work for me because obviously I've got to customize everything to that particular business, whereas the easy thing for me is the vacation program or win $1 million or any of those sorts of things because they're all packaged up and, they're basically set and forget. I would just encourage anyone, if you wanted the free book with all of the 300 pages worth of ideas on there, and you wanted to, ask about any of the other things, and my personal email address is john@theinstituteofwow.com. More than happy to, basically jump on a call with you. What I would say probably in closing, though, George, is that I think as a podcaster, there's a number of these things that could be used. Amazon have been around for a while and should have taught all of us the power of collecting a database. Yeah. And tell me if I'm wrong, George, but, most podcasters don't know who the listeners are. They might have some idea of their demographic profile, but they don't have any email addresses or phone numbers. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely. But I also know that to build up content, and that might be aside from what the content we're already doing, to get a newsletter together, I've been told all this. And I'll tell you for myself, it's been very difficult to do anything that might be an affiliate program. I've tried to do that over the years. Anything that has to just build that farming of leads or potential people that are possibly listening to the programming, it is tough to go and put that together. It's just I haven't taken the time to do that, and I'm sure other podcasters might be looking for something that would be to get advertisers, to get somebody to come on board that can give. And the thing I want to ask you is that when it comes to finding clients, and a podcaster wants to find clients, or something like my outfit where we're trying to get somebody to go and do a podcast series with us, they expect that instant payoff. They expect metrics, data right off the bat, because now everybody can bring and provide data. So how important is that to bring that kind of instant gratification and the metrics that you're looking for, even though it's not important? They're just, they're asking for it, but it's like, trust the process instead.
I would encourage anyone to go to FB for Facebook, so fbcontestblueprint.com. We build all our sites for Americans now. We don't do much in Australia because the American dollar to us is much better. And so therefore, if you go to fbcontestblueprint.com, you'll see how we get massive numbers of leads for $20 a day. You can expect to get somewhere between 500 and 1,000 leads in a week for that, as long as you've got a sexy product, obviously. The thing I would suggest, a radio station guy had lunch with me about 2 weeks ago. Now, he won't do this because, excuse the pun, but he's a dickhead. And he said to me, listen, over all the years of contests, how do you build up a radio audience? I said, really, really simple. It's just run a license to print money promotion. He said, what do you mean? I said, just, advertise on social media, your radio station call sign, and tell people to come on. And basically at 6:15, 7:15 and 8:15 in the morning, because as you know, George, breakfast is where the radio stations make most of their money, just hand out bingo numbers, and they check their driver's license, because on your American driver's license, you've got numbers. So you don't have to distribute any bingo cards like we used to in the old days and put scratch panels on them. You turn something, whether it's a Medicare card or the driver's license, but basically you use that as a free of charge platform. And when you announce these numbers at 6:15, 7:15 and 8:15 in the morning, if they mark out 4 of the 10 numbers that are given, then they either win or they're in the chance to win $1 million. And we get the $1 million from Lloyd's of London for about 22 grand. You can get $50,000 from Lloyd's of London for about 3 or 4 grand.
Wow.
So, and what I'm saying is that, if a podcaster advertise, listen, you don't want their email address anyway. They're not going to open it. Okay. You only want their cell number. So therefore, because 84% of mobiles are answered within 2 minutes, right? Or sorry, not answered, but looked at within 2 minutes. So you just say to them, listen, get your driver's license out. We're going to play a game, and you're in the chance to win $50,000. It's insured, so you don't have to come up with the $50,000. You just give Lloyd's of London a few grand, right? And what I'm going to ask you to do is text to me now your cell number, and you'll instantly be in the draw. Now, if that podcast has 5,000 listeners, I can almost guarantee you that 4,000 of them will give you their phone number within 30 seconds.
Wow.
I've seen it done at the U2 concert. Bono came down under, and he's a good marketer, that guy. He's almost as good as Paul McCartney. He actually said, look, there's 50,000 people in the stadium in Brisbane. What I'd like you to do now, everyone get their phone out. So everyone got their phone out. He said, I want you to text your number to me for the chance to win whatever it might be. And 50,000 people gave him their phone number within 60 seconds.
That's amazing.
Yep.
John Dwyer, the incentive.The.com, the incentive.The.com. Remember the in front when you go and go to the website. John, I really appreciate you taking time out to go and talk to me about all this, and also just incorporating the part of being that podcast guest. I really do appreciate that insight from that, and, a bit of a different feel for the audience. But anything else we want to go to make sure to mention? You just mentioned fbcontestblueprint.com. And, it's amazing what you have out there. Thank you for making time to go and join me. I really appreciate it this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me as a guest, George.
All right. And thank you, listeners, as always, for listening to another Podcaster Show. And, as always, kingofpodcasts.com. If you want to go ahead and be a guest here on Podcaster Show, you have your own podcast, and maybe you are a very experienced guest yourself. You want to go ahead and be featured here on the program, go ahead and reach out to me, and we can even go and consider bringing you on there. But again, there's a form at the website, kingofpodcasts.com. Make sure to go and do that. And we will talk to you next time.